On the morning of November 18, 1902, a man emerged from the White Mountains of New Hampshire, carrying nothing but the clothes on his back and a hunting rifle with no ammunition. His name was Thomas Wickham. He was 34 years old. He had been missing for 11 days. 3 men had gone into those mountains. Only Thomas Wickham came out. The initial report filed by Sheriff Harold Pembroke of Grafton County describes Wickham as responsive to basic questions regarding his physical condition, but entirely unwilling to provide details of the expedition's outcome. Dr. Samuel Large, who examined Wickham at the county hospital, noted that the patient was dehydrated and suffering from exposure, but showed no signs of injury consistent with violence or accident. His hands were blistered. His feet were in poor condition. He had lost approximately 15 pounds. When asked about his companions, Daniel Forster and James Kellogg, Thomas Wickham said only, "They didn't make it back." That was the first time he spoke about it. It would also be the last. The historian attempting to reconstruct what happened in those 11 days works from fragments. There are no diaries. No maps were recovered. The men left no trail that subsequent search parties could follow with any confidence. What remains are the testimonies of those who knew the 3 men, the questions asked by authorities, and most significantly the questions Thomas Wickham refused to answer. His silence was not the silence of trauma, though many assumed it to be. Those who knew him before and those who observed him after consistently noted that he was lucid, deliberate, and fully present. He went about his life with what several described as unusual focus. He did not drink to excess. He did not suffer night terrors, at least none that anyone witnessed. He did not avoid the mountains or show signs of what we might now call post-traumatic distress. He simply would not talk about it. His wife, Catherine Wickham, testified before a county inquest 3 weeks after his return. The court reporter captured her words with the flat precision of bureaucratic record. "My husband has told me nothing of what occurred. I have asked him directly. He has declined to answer. I do not believe he is unable to speak of it. I believe he has chosen not to." She paused according to the transcript and then added, "He does not seem troubled by guilt. He seems decided." That word decided appears again and again in the fragmentary records. It suggests intention. It suggests a man who had considered his options and selected silence not as a refuge but as a strategy. The inquest produced no conclusions. Without a body, without a crime scene, without testimony from the sole witness, the court could do little but acknowledge the deaths of Daniel Forster and James Kellogg as presumed fatalities under unknown circumstances. The case was left open. Thomas Wickham was advised that he could be called upon again if new evidence emerged. He never was. The mountains kept their dead and the living kept their silence. But here is what the historian can establish. Thomas Wickham was not a man prone to silence before that November. Those who knew him described him as affable, talkative, someone who enjoyed storytelling. He had served briefly in the Spanish-American War and was known to recount his experiences with humor and detail at local gatherings. After his return from the mountains, he stopped attending those gatherings. He stopped telling stories altogether. The shift was noted in a letter dated December 1902. His sister-in-law, Margarita Cole, wrote to a cousin, "Thomas is not the same. It is not that he is grim or withdrawn. He is polite. He works. He is kind to Catherine. But there is a wall now, and I do not think he built it to protect himself. I think he built it to protect something else." What that something else might have been is the question that defines the case. And it is a question that Thomas Wickham carried to his grave without answering. To understand the silence, one must first understand what was lost in it. The 3 men, Thomas Wickham, Daniel Forster, and James Kellogg, were not strangers to one another. They had known each other for years. They were bound by work, by geography, and by the kind of trust that developed slowly in small towns where reputation is currency. Daniel Forster was 41, a surveyor by trade, and by all accounts a man of exactitude and confidence. His work took him into remote areas regularly. He knew the White Mountains as well as anyone. In the summer of 1902, he had been hired to survey a proposed rail extension through the western slopes, and it was this work that first brought him into contact with James Kellogg. Kellogg was 28, a logger, and the youngest of the 3. His family had worked timber in the region for 2 generations. He was described in a memorial notice published by the Littleton Courier as a man of steady temperament and strong constitution, well regarded by his peers. Photographs show a man with a square jaw and direct gaze, someone who looked like he belonged in the woods. Thomas Wickham was the link between them. He had worked with Forrester on previous surveying jobs, serving as a chairman and assistant. He had known Kellogg through the latter's brother, a fellow veteran. When Forrester proposed a hunting expedition into the more remote regions of the White Mountains that November, he invited both men. The expedition was not unusual. Hunting trips of this kind were common. The White Mountains in winter were dangerous, but not prohibitively so for experienced men. They planned to be gone for 10 days, moving through the high country west of Mount Lafayette, where game was plentiful and human presence rare. Catherine Wickham later testified that her husband had been looking forward to the trip. He said it would be good to get away from town for a while. He said Daniel knew the country and we had no reason to worry. They departed on November 7, 1902 from the town of Littleton. Several witnesses observed their departure. Hiram Talbot, who ran the general store, recorded selling them provisions: flour, salt, pork, coffee, ammunition, tobacco, matches, and a quantity of rope. The amount of supplies, he noted, was appropriate for a party of 3 men planning to be out for 10 days. There is a photograph taken the day before they left. It shows the 3 men standing outside Forrest's home. Forrester is in the center, slightly taller than the others, holding a rifle. Kellogg stands to his left, arms crossed, smiling slightly. Wickham is on the right, looking directly at the camera. They appear relaxed. There is no tension visible in their postures. No hint of the disaster to come. What is known of the first days of their journey comes from secondhand sources. A trapper named Emile Duquesne reported encountering the 3 men on November 9th, approximately 15 miles into the backcountry. He later told investigators that they seemed in good spirits and well supplied. They shared coffee with him and spoke of heading farther west into an area Duquesne himself avoided due to difficult terrain. "I told them to watch the weather," Duquesne said. Forrester said he'd been through worse. The young one Kellogg. He didn't say much, but he looked ready. Wickham was joking about something. I don't remember what. That was the last confirmed sighting of all 3 men together. What emerges from these scattered recollections is a picture of normally. These were not men marching toward conflict. They were not estranged. In the days before the expedition, there is no record of arguments, no suggestion of debts or resentments. Thomas Wickham attended church with his wife the Sunday before departure. Daniel Forrester paid his bills in full. James Kellogg wrote a letter to his mother which she later shared with investigators. It was brief and affectionate, closing with, "I'll bring you back a good story." The bonds between them were unremarkable in their steadiness. Forrester trusted Wickham's competence. Kellogg respected Forrest's experience. Wickham enjoyed both men's company. These were not dramatic friendships forged in crisis, but the ordinary relationships of rural working men who knew each other's capabilities and limitations. And that ordinariness is what makes the silence so profound. Because whatever happened in those 11 days shattered that trust completely or confirmed it in a way that could never be spoken aloud. The search for Daniel Forrester and James Kellogg began on November 20th, 1902, 2 days after Thomas Wickham returned alone. By that time, the weather had turned. A storm had moved through the White Mountains, dropping several inches of snow and erasing whatever tracks might have remained. Sheriff Pembroke organized a party of 12 men, including Emile Duquesne, who knew the area. They retraced the route Wickham would likely have taken and pushed west into the high country where Duquesne had last seen the 3 men together. The search lasted 4 days. They found nothing, no bodies, no campsite, no abandoned equipment. The mountains had swallowed Daniel Forrester and James Kellogg as cleanly as if they had never existed. The absence of physical evidence forced investigators to rely entirely on Thomas Wickham, and Thomas Wickham gave them almost nothing. The transcript of his questioning conducted on November 21st by Sheriff Pembroke and County Prosecutor Martin Hughes runs to 8 pages. Most of it is silence rendered as dashes and notations. Witness declined to answer. Witness remained silent. Witness stated he had nothing further to add. What little he did say is stark. When did you last see Daniel Forrester alive? In the mountains. Can you be more specific about the location? No. Was Mr. Forrester injured? No response. Did you and Mr. Forrester quarrel? No. Did you witness Mr. Forrest's death? No response. The same questions apply to James Kellogg. When did you last see him alive in the mountains? Did you leave them deliberately, or were you separated by accident? No response. Mr. Wickham, 2 men are dead. Their families deserve answers. Will you not provide them? I can't help them. Prosecutor Hughes pressed harder, suggesting scenarios. Accident, illness, animal attack, a fall. Wickham did not confirm or deny any of them. At one point, Hughes asked directly, "Did you kill those men?" Wickham's response is recorded as follows: "No, I did not." It was the only time during questioning that he answered immediately and without hesitation. Hughes asked if he could prove his innocence. Wickham said he could not. Hughes asked if he understood that his silence made him appear guilty. Wickham said he understood. Then he stopped talking entirely. The inquest turned to secondary evidence. The rifle Wickham had carried out of the mountains was examined. It showed no signs of recent firing. His clothing was tested for blood. None was found beyond minor smears consistent with his own blistered hands. His story, what little there was of it, held together only in its refusal to cohere. Forres's widow, Alice Forrester, attended the inquest. She sat in the back of the courtroom and did not speak. But after the proceedings, she was overheard by a clerk saying to another family member, "He knows what happened, and he's not telling because he thinks it's kinder not to." The clerk, a young man named Peter Voss, included this detail in his personal diary. He added his own observation. Mrs. Forrester did not seem angry at Wickham. She seemed afraid of what he might say if he did speak. James Kellogg's father, Robert Kellogg, took a different approach. He confronted Wickham outside the courthouse. Witnesses reported that the older man grabbed Wickham by the coat and demanded to know how his son had died. Wickham did not resist. He stood still and let the man shout. When Robert Kellogg finished exhausted and weeping, Wickham said only, "I'm sorry." Then he walked away. The separation, the moment when 3 men became one, remains the void at the center of the case. Without Wickham's testimony, the historian is left to infer. The possibilities are few, and each carries implications Wickham refused to confirm. They could have been separated by accident. A fall, a sudden storm, disorientation in unfamiliar terrain. But if that were true, why not say so? Why withhold details of a simple tragedy? They could have been separated by conflict, a dispute, a betrayal, a decision made under duress, but no one who knew the men believed them capable of turning on each other. And Wickham's denial of violence was absolute. Or they could have been separated by something else. Something that left Wickham alive not because he was stronger or luckier, but because a choice was made. And that choice, whatever it was, could not be explained without destroying something Wickham valued more than his own reputation. In 1903, a journalist from the Boston Globe traveled to Littleton to investigate the case. He interviewed dozens of people. In his unpublished notes, now held by the New Hampshire Historical Society, he wrote, "Everyone I spoke to believes Wickham is protecting someone. They disagree on who. Some say he is protecting Forres's memory. Some say Kellogg's. Some say he is protecting the families, but no one believes he is protecting himself." Thomas Wickham returned to work in January of 1903. He took a job as a carpenter, a trade he had practiced before the expedition. His employer, a builder named Amos Grayson, later said that Wickham was the most reliable man I ever hired. Never late, never careless. He didn't talk much, but he didn't need to. His work spoke for him. He lived quietly. He attended church with Catherine, but stopped participating in social functions. He was seen in town conducting business, buying supplies, speaking when spoken to, but he did not volunteer conversation. He did not explain himself. He did not defend himself. The community's response was divided. Some believed him guilty of something he refused to name. Others believed him traumatized beyond the ability to speak. A few believed him honorable, bound by a promise or a principle that mattered more than public opinion. In March of 1903, an editorial appeared in the Littleton Courier. It did not name Wickham directly, but its subject was unmistakable. There are silences born of shame, and silences born of dignity. A man who will not speak may be hiding a crime, or he may be honoring a confidence that death has made sacred. We cannot know which without testimony, and testimony, it seems, we will not receive. Catherine Wickham remained with her husband. In later years, she rarely spoke of the case, but a letter she wrote to her sister in 1905 survives. In it, she said, "Thomas has nightmares sometimes, but not the kind people think. He does not dream of death. He dreams of speaking. He wakes relieved that he is not. That detail, small, private, almost tender, suggests that Wickham's silence was not effortless. It cost him something, but he paid that cost willingly year after year until it became simply who he was. The man who came back and would not say why. The pressure on him never fully ceased. In 1907, a private investigator hired by the Kellogg family attempted to interview him. Wickham refused to meet. In 1911, a writer working on a book about unsolved cases in New England wrote to him requesting an interview. Wickham did not reply. In 1918, during the war, when Wickham was interviewed as part of a routine background check for a defense job, the interviewer noted, subject was asked about the 1902 incident. Subject declined comment. No further questions pursued. He was never charged with a crime. There was no evidence. There was no body. There was only the absence of answers. And the law could not prosecute absence. But the silence marked him. In a small town, reputation is everything, and Wickham's reputation became synonymous with mystery. Mothers told their children not to bother Mr. Wickham with questions. Shopkeepers served him without small talk. He was treated with a kind of cautious respect, the way one might treat a man carrying something fragile and dangerous. And he accepted that. He did not fight it. He did not try to rehabilitate his image or explain himself in ways that stopped short of full disclosure. He lived as though he had made a bargain, his silence in exchange for something intangible but essential, and he honored that bargain completely. In 1923, Daniel Forres's widow Alice passed away. In her personal effects, her daughter found a letter addressed to Thomas Wickham dated 1903, but never sent. The letter was brief. It read, "I do not know what happened in those mountains, but I know my husband and I know you. If you will not speak, it is because he would not have wanted you to. I do not forgive you because I do not know what there is to forgive, but I do not blame you. I hope that is enough." The daughter, Elizabeth Forrester Hale, sent the letter to Wickham in 1924. He received it, read it, and wrote back a single line. It was enough. Thank you. That exchange, quiet decades late, unburdened by explanation, may be the closest anyone came to understanding what Thomas Wickham carried. Thomas Wickham died in 1941 at the age of 73. He passed away in his home, surrounded by family from complications related to pneumonia. His obituary in the Littleton Courier made no mention of the 1902 expedition. It described him as a skilled carpenter, a churchgoer, a man respected for his integrity. He left behind no confession, no deathbed revelation, no letter to be opened after his passing. If he wrote anything about what happened in the White Mountains, it was destroyed, lost, or never existed. Catherine Wickham outlived him by 6 years. In a conversation recorded by a local historian in 1945, she was asked if her husband had ever told her what happened. Her answer was carefully phrased. "He told me what he thought I needed to know." When pressed, she said, "He told me he came back because he had to, and that Daniel and James didn't come back because they couldn't. That's all." The historian, a young woman named Margaret Dalton, who was compiling oral histories of the region, asked if Catherine believed her husband had done something wrong. Catherine's response, "I believe he did something hard." That distinction may be the key. Not wrong, but hard. Not a crime, but a choice. Not guilt, but responsibility. The case has been revisited periodically over the decades. In 1968, a team of amateur historians and mountaineers attempted to locate the remains of Forrester and Kellogg using improved search techniques and equipment. They found nothing. The White Mountains do not give up their dead easily, and 66 years of weather, erosion, and growth had erased whatever traces might have once existed. In 1979, a graduate student writing a thesis on unsolved disappearances in New England interviewed several elderly residents of Littleton who remembered Wickham. One of them, a man named Harold Pitts, said, "My father knew Tom Wickham. He told me once that whatever happened up there, it wasn't about Tom saving himself. It was about him carrying something back that the other two couldn't. And I don't mean his body. I mean something they needed him to do." When asked what that might have been, Pitts said, "Keep a secret. Honor a promise. Let them be remembered a certain way. I don't know. But my father said Tom lived like a man keeping watch over something, not hiding, watching." That image of Wickham as a guardian rather than a fugitive recurs in the testimonies of those who knew him. He was not a man running from the past. He was a man standing in front of it, blocking the view. But what was he protecting? The historian is left with possibilities, none provable. Perhaps Daniel Forster and James Kellogg died in a way that would have shamed them or their families. Perhaps there was cowardice or panic or a decision made in extremity that would have tarnished their memory. Perhaps Wickham's silence was an act of mercy, allowing them to be remembered as men who died bravely rather than men who died in a manner they would have regretted. Perhaps there was an accident caused by someone's error. Forster's overconfidence, Kellogg's inexperience, even Wickham's own mistake, and Wickham chose to absorb the blame silently rather than assign it publicly. Perhaps there was a moment when a choice had to be made about who would survive, and that choice was made by Forster or Kellogg themselves. Perhaps they sent Wickham back, and he honored their decision by never explaining it, never letting their sacrifice be questioned or diminished by speculation. Or perhaps, and this is the possibility that resonates most strongly with the pattern of Wickham's life afterward, perhaps something happened that could not be explained without implicating a living person. Not Wickham himself, but someone else. Someone whose name never appeared in the case files. Someone Wickham protected by refusing to construct any narrative at all. Each of these possibilities fits the evidence. None can be confirmed. And that perhaps was precisely Wickham's intent. By saying nothing, he prevented the formation of a single story. He left the door open to interpretation, knowing that interpretation would divide and weaken any consensus against the dead. In the end, the historian must conclude that Thomas Wickham's silence was not a failure of memory or courage. It was an act of will. He chose not to speak, and he maintained that choice across 4 decades through social pressure, legal scrutiny, and personal cost. He came back alive, and he never spoke again, not because he couldn't, but because he decided that some things should remain in the mountains where they happened, known only to the men who were there, and to the silence that outlived them all. The case remains open in the technical sense. The deaths of Daniel Forster and James Kellogg are still classified as unsolved, but there is no active investigation. There are no new leads. There is only the archive, a thin folder of testimonies, a few letters, a photograph of 3 men who trusted each other, and the vast, unreachable silence of the man who returned. If Thomas Wickham believed that silence was the most honorable choice available to him, then perhaps the historian's role is not to break that silence, but to honor it, to acknowledge that some stories end not with answers, but with the dignity of questions left unasked. He came back alive. That is the fact. Everything else is shadow conjecture and the quiet respect owed to a man who carried something heavy all his life and never set it down, not even at the end.